Alrighty, so now we are ready to dive into the basics of Visual Studio Code. First thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete this test folder from our GitHub video, and I'm going to create a new folder, -- space, and then template. So we're going to create a template project that we're going to copy and paste to create our further projects. And this is going to allow us to have some of the setup done so that we can just jump right into coding the project. Okay, so I'm going to open up this folder within Visual Studio Code. Okay, so we can see we have our folder here and it has nothing inside of it. Before we actually get to the project itself, I want to start by talking about extensions. For that, we're going to click on the icon with the squares here, and you can see that we have some extensions. So this will allow you to customize the way that Visual Studio Code runs. So there are two extensions I'm going to show you that I think are very useful. The first one is called color-highlight. So I'm just going to search for it. And you can see the first one here, color highlight. And what this allows is anytime you have a hex code for a color or an RGB value for a color, it will actually show that color within the code, so you can actually see what it is at a glance. So we're going to click Install. Okay, it's done already. You can see it's installed globally. Next, we're going to install our second and even more important extension, and that is Live Server. So you can see we want the first one here, Live Server 5.6.1, and we're going to install this. If we scroll down, we can see a little bit more about it. But more or less what happens is it allows when you update your code, you can see that we have the project open here on the right side. It will automatically refresh and save your changes and reflect them in the project itself. We'll test this out in just a minute. So before we get to that, we want to go back and actually create the files within our project. So first, we're going to use this icon here to create a new file. We'll start with our index.html, press enter, and then we're going to make a style.css file, press enter, and then lastly, we're going to make a script.js file and press enter. So you can see that it opened the three files that we just created, and they're all currently blank. We can also minimize our Explorer here by pressing this button. Now I'm going to show you some intelligent autocomplete functions within Visual Studio Code. So first, if you're starting from a blank HTML file, we are going to include first a doctype. So you see I pressed just an arrow here and the first option is doctype. I'm going to press enter and by default it's HTML. Perfect. Next thing, I'm going to type out DOC and you can see that it has an Emmet abbreviation. And if I press enter, it will populate with the things that are needed in a standard HTML document. So it creates our head, it creates our body, and it creates our HTML element itself. Very cool. The next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to connect our HTML file to our style and our script files. So first, for our style files, we're going to use a link element in our head, and we're going to press tab. And you can see by default, it's looking for a style sheet. And the href is the location. And so for us, I'm going to type S, and you can see it's trying to help autocomplete. I'm just going to use the down arrow to select style.css, and I'm going to press enter. So now our style file is linked to our HTML file. And then for our script, I'm actually going to do this at the bottom of the body. And I'm going to comment out a title. So you would do this with Control ? On Windows or Command ? on a Mac. And you can see that it creates a green comment. So this is code that will not actually be executed. This is what is used to provide notes on codes or titles just to explain what things are. So in our case, we're just going to write script. And then below this, we're going to have a script element. Again, we can press enter and it'll autocomplete that for us. And specifically, we're going to add in the src attribute, press enter. and we want to point this to our script.js file. Okay, so now we've linked our CSS and our script to our HTML. What we're actually going to do next is we're going to close Visual Studio Code and reopen it now that we have an index.html file so that we can actually trigger our live server extension. So I'm going to do that and go back and open a new window. Okay, and I click on Open Folder, and I'm going to open my template folder again. And we can see now at the bottom right, we have this option called Go Live. I'm going to click on this to launch our project. Okay, so we can see that we have our project launched and we have our title here of document. So if we jump back to the code and we change this, we are going to change it to say template now. And if we save it, jump back, we can see that it's updated to now say template. Okay, very cool. The next thing we're going to be looking at is we want to add a few things within the head of our HTML file in order to import them. So first, we're going to start with Font Awesome. So Font Awesome is a site where you can have many different icons that you can use in your project for free. And this is something we're going to use in a bunch of our projects. So it's a good idea to add this in the template so we don't have to configure this every time. So we're actually going to use a content delivery network for this, just to simplify the process a little bit. And I will provide a link for this within the course. Just zoom in here so you can see that a little better. And basically, we just want to copy the CSS, the first one here. We want the CSS all.min.js. So we can click the copy button there and jump back to our code. And what we're going to do is above this style.css, or we're going to create a link element and press enter. And then we're going to paste this in for our href. Another trick in Visual Studio Code is word wrap. So you can see that this is kind of a long line and we can't really see it all and see the rest of our code. So I'm going to use Alt-Z, and that will word wrap to allow us to force all the code to be visible. You can see that there's a gap between 7 and 8 because technically this is one line, but to us it's showing up as 2 lines so that we can read it all. Okay, so now we have Font Awesome added. Let's just jump back to the browser and let's just pick an icon at random. Let's pick this first one here. And again, I'll provide a link to this within the course. How this works is you're just going to copy the HTML from whichever icon you want. And then back in our code, we're just going to paste this in the body, and I'm going to save that, and I'm going to jump back to our template, and you can see we have an icon. It's very, very small because we haven't styled it, but that proves that the connection is working. Awesome. Next, I want to take care of this favicon. So in my opinion, websites look a lot more professional if they have a custom favicon rather than the default globe that we have here. So to take care of that, I'm going to link to this article about favicons. And within this article, it discusses a trick that can be used to use Google's Favicon Service. So this will allow you to pull a favicon from a website that already exists instead of having to add that file in every single time in every project. So we're just going to copy this URL here, copy this link address, and we're going to jump back to our code. And above our Font Awesome, we are going to create another link element. But this time, instead of a style sheet, we're going to delete that. And this is an icon. And we're also going to give it a type attribute to be more specific. It is an image/PNG. And then we're going to paste this link in here. We don't want the CSS tricks domain specifically, but I'm just going to pass in the favicon from my own personal website. You can type in your personal website here in your project, but that's what I'm going to type. And I'm going to save that. And we can jump back and you see it's now changed from a globe to a J. Perfect. Let's jump back and we can get rid of our Font Awesome icon here. Next, we have a few things that we want to add in our style CSS. So let's jump over there. The first thing we're going to add is on our HTML, which is our parent element, we want to add a box sizing of border box. So what this means is anytime that you add padding to any element, what can happen is that padding will stretch the page. So let's say that you had a page that was 100% of the viewport's width. And if you added padding to something, it would make that more than 100%, and it would force a horizontal scroll bar. So what this does is it prevents that from happening because it prevents padding from adding extra width or extra height to the page. So that's something that we'll use in every project, so it's something that we're going to include in the template. Next, for the body, we are going to add a margin of 0. So this will be 0 on all 4 sides, top right, bottom left. And we're also going to add a min height of 100 VH. So VH stands for viewport height, and that is the full height of the entire window that you're in. So that means that we want it to always stretch our background at least the full height of the screen, even if the content isn't enough to take up the full height of the screen. You know what? Let's give it a background color just to be sure we can see what's going on. So I'm going to give it a background color of, I don't know, Dodger blue. Okay, so let's save that and jump over. Okay, so we can see that we have a background that is taking up literally the entire screen. Excellent. So we can go back and get rid of that for now because the template should be as plain as possible. So that's all we need to really add to our template. So you can make sure that you save that as it is. And if not, I will provide a version of the template within the course if you didn't want to actually make it manually yourself. But this is what we're going to use throughout the course a few times to actually create our projects. In the next video, we're going to explore actually hosting on GitHub pages, and also I will explain a little bit more about the dev tools, which I'll reference many times throughout the course. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.